So, I'm just having some soup and a cup of fennel tea. And James is having a carrot pulp patty and eggs with capers and
side order
tabbouleh
there
and ginger with turmeric, so it's a shot, so you can brace yourself for that. And I'll be talking about the history course again for the most part, but I guess I'll talk a little bit about those too. Neither were really worth watching, sadly. The mystery one,
it's supposed to be 20 of twists. 20 of twists.
Well, it just wasn't believable, really. For me, it was like, really, that's just unlikely. And I don't know. It was okay, actually.
Yeah, it was okay.
The scenery was amazing. So I now want to go to Wales.
Yeah.
I want to go live in Wales.
I was thinking of that. I don't think if you were in the northern part,
Looks
there'd be
lovely.
that much pollution. There's a lot of pollution in the south. They do coal mining down there. Probably have to do a little bit of steel industry, not as much as they used to.
All right, so what happened is I was talking about the history stuff and the camera timer went out, so I went back a few pages. I don't know if I've already talked about this on camera or if I missed even more, but in any case, the course is worth watching, so definitely borrow that from your local public library. French launched an invasion of Scotland in 1745 to try to place the Stuart pretender, the titular James III, and the 8th on the throne. Bonnie Prince Charlie defeated an English army and took Edinburgh. Battle of Culloden in 1746. He fled in disguise to France soon after. In America, the French captured Fort Oswego and Fort William Henry, while the British expedition sent a capture to Cape Breton, north of Nova Scotia, was destroyed by storm. In India, the French took Calcutta. In America, the British finally captured Fort Duquesne.
Duquesne, that's how you say it.
James told me yesterday. I can't remember.
You can't. That's why I believe in review, right? It's anyways, Fort Duquesne, which is present-day Pittsburgh.
Yes. Guadeloupe in the Caribbean, and Quebec after a British army under General James Wolfe stormed the Plains of Abraham. In India, General Clive threw the French out of Bengal. The Treaty of Paris, 1763. British got Canada, all of the American territories, the Mississippi, Grenada, Dominica, Tobago, and St. Vincent in the West Indies. Senegal in Africa, and the removal of the French East India Company troops from India. Prussia kept Silesia. France retained a few islands off Canada, the West Indies, and Africa, and a few trading posts in India. And we mentioned that those French islands are still owned by France.
Yeah,
Saint-Pierre and Miquelon.
Yeah, very close to Miquelon.
So if you happen to be in Canada and you want to, I imagine you get your passport stamped when you go there.
Yeah, you'd think so.
You'd think so.
Yeah, it's so close to Newfoundland. Big trouble is it's at the mouth of the St. Lawrence. And after the Germans took over France, they basically took over their colony, right? So French, all sorts of German spying and stuff like that was happening right there.
Right there.
Yeah.
Oh my.
I don't know if they built any submarine bases there, but you can see how much trouble that would have been. It's mouth of the St. Lawrence, there's lots of shipping comes down there. And also because of Great Circle routes, I suspect shipping going from the United States to England would go by there. You know how the Great Circle used to work for boats and not just planes. So I think that's why the Titanic, it was, I think, kind of off maybe not so much Newfoundland, but maybe more Nova Scotia, somewhere around there. That's why it was way up there, because it was going to New York, right, from I don't know, Liverpool maybe, but someplace in England. That's why it's up there in the icy waters.
I didn't realize that. Okay. So, now I'm on page 102. Peasants, perhaps 3/4 or 4/5 of the population, did the work on great landed estates and small farms that made everyone else wealthy. In Russia, Poland, Austria-Hungary, and most German states, most peasants were serfs. They were very much in their lord's power because he ran the local court and owned the only mill and oven in town. France's peasants fared much better. Most peasants in France were free and could leave the land.
Huge difference. So serfs are kind of halfway between peasants and slaves.
Yeah, like my grandma's French family, the family she came from, and I didn't know, but they used to grow grapes. They were grape wine producers in
Back in
France.
the old country, yeah.
Mm-hmm. I just learned that not that long ago, a few years ago.
Yeah.
And they ended up going to, I guess the grapes weren't growing right or whatever, so they went to Argentina.
Yeah, there we go. Real
started up there, and then
family.
a whole lot of, really, somebody in the family should write a book about it. Because
Yeah.
a big soap opera, lots of things happen.
Yeah, many families is that way. At least in the new world. In the old world, there's a lot of...
And eventually, in Victorian times, they ended up here in Canada.
See. Yeah.
So, back to France. They were inferior in law to nobles. Along with the middle class, the peasants bore the brunt of taxes. English peasants were best off.
How times
they
haven't
were
changed. Poor people bear the taxes.
Okay, so I think the peasants I was talking about initially would have been Scottish, maybe, or I don't know.
Where is it?
I'd have to. It doesn't matter. You can look it up. They were equal in legal rights to the greatest lord. Any peasant owning or renting land valued at, I don't know what that mark means. Is that a pound? What is that?
It's a pound.
$2 pounds a year had a vote. Scottish and Irish peasants didn't do so well. Upper class children were conceived early in young marriages. Middling and lower class children were conceived in their mid-20s. Upper class children were not reared by their parents directly. And they may not have received as much love and may not have been as healthy without mother's milk and care. I mean, if you're caring for somebody else's kid, watch the video games, you know? Right? I mean, your own, you're gonna care more about your own children.
On
than,
average, yeah.
Anyway. I'm not saying totally. I'm not saying your babysitter is really neglectful or whatever. But you can't expect them to be like you.
I don't think so.
So, lower class children were reared by their own parents. And they were talking about how, or he was talking about in the video, how the boys would be sent off to public school, which was private school. And
That's what the rich kids.
yeah, when they were young. So, I mean, honestly, you know that the wealthy people, what they were, like, I have a theory, and I'm sure that I'm right. I just have to prove it. But that yellows are produced from a neglected parents that aren't there to take care of their kids. So that's why we have a whole lot of yellows right now in our society, because women had to go off to work, or they could. They were encouraged to, and they did. And the kids weren't getting as much love. So they were getting things like video games. Here, I'll give you the new Star Wars Millennium Falcon toy and the new video games that are out and whatever, right? Just to make up for the fact that they weren't there, but that just turned them into ultimate consumers. So you have these yellows that are like super consumers, and then you have the boys that are sent off to public school, private school, and they get mean. And so they're raised to be reds. The boys are raised to be reds, the girls are raised to be yellows. And so you have I think that is a similar sort of situation. You end up with a lot of aggressive types in the lumpen proletariat, and I think that's why you can't count on them to
boys, sorry, I thought you
No.
finished. Go ahead. Can't count on them to help people out.
to help society,
Yep.
to make society a better place. You can't count on either.
They're not even
Really,
good at helping
the-
themselves out, right? Because they end up fighting wars. And They
The
don't
like the aristocracy, they want things to stay. They don't want the people to become more independent and have votes, and they don't want that. You know, they want to have the power. And the lumpen proletariat, they're also aggressive types, and they're not going to be so inclined to improve society. They're going to be more traditional. They're going to have traditional values, and they can't be counted on.
Yeah.
Or
so
anyway,
their big dream is to win the lottery, right?
Mhm.
And become like the
become like
people that rule over.
exactly. And I have something to say that's going to sound racist, but it's not. It's a commentary on a culture, but it has nothing to do with race. Anybody could be raised in that culture. If you have that belief system, then I think your children are going to end up this way. Because I actually don't believe that people are aggressive, or there might be a few, but not many that would be aggressive by nature. It's nurture. And I think I was learning in one of the great not the great courses, it was a Gale course, about the evil eye, and how you prevent your baby from getting the evil eye by not giving them very much attention. Because if you give them too much attention, they're going to get the evil eye. So you're raising aggressive people. If you're not giving them enough attention, they're going to grow up aggressive. Anyway.
Yeah.
So, upper class females were not given liberal educations in this period. Middle and children saw growing opportunities. Girls were sometimes allowed to attend school. Generally, girls of this class were educated at home. Similar to aristocrats, peasants received little schooling. Most children of peasants were farmed out. 18th century, decrying arranged marriages. Jacobins, they abolished such title as Monsieur and Madame in favor of citizen. They intended to replace the superstitions of organized Christianity with a cult of reason.
So that citizen thing would be the equivalent of what the Russians did a little over 100 years later by calling them comrade.
Yeah. Industrial towns grew too fast. To plan for the arrival of hundreds of thousands of immigrants, tenements had no indoor plumbing nor toilets and often no windows, page 151. The air was thick with factory smoke and terrible smells from tanneries, dye works, animal and human excrement, and assorted river smells. They were terribly overcrowded. The working class diet consisted of potatoes, weak stew, stimulants such as tea, and depressants such as alcohol. It's not surprising that the people in this class were especially prone to diseases including typhus, cholera, diphtheria, malaria, and smallpox. In 1840, the average death rate in Britain was 1 death in 45 per year. In Manchester, it was 1 in 20. Thomas Malthus' essay on population of 1798 was almost as famous and much more frightening. Malthus noted that the world's food supply increases arithmetically, that is gradually, but the population increases geometrically, doubles, then squares itself, and so on. Sooner or later, the population is going to outrun the food supply, he said. The only things that slow down the process are demographic disaster, famines, wars, epidemics, and natural disasters. Unfortunately, human life was being preserved on the planet, further depleted by modern medicine, peace, and charity, all of which merely encourage the poor to have more children. So I'll talk about the rest later. I wouldn't recommend those videos, but definitely borrow this great course.
Yeah.